Hello, BookTube. It is Sunday. It's about 20 degrees Fahrenheit, but a clear blue sky, crisp air. Wonderful, wonderful day. Sorry about the lighting. I tried to move the curtain here a little bit to see if I can fix it. Yeah, it's better. So, we're going to do a third shelf tour consult. That's what we're calling them now. The first was when Steve visited almost a year ago now, and he did one of my Star Trek shelves. And he went through it like he would his own at home. And then when he was up here for Thanksgiving, he did a fiction shelf, which we've already posted. And then this is a nonfiction shelf. So we'd love to do this every time he comes up. I get a kick out of him. He'd be a little tough on some of the books, but that's great fun. So, without any further ado or any more yabbering from me, take it away, Steve.
So BookTube, as I mentioned in that last video, one of the things you do when you're here at the farmhouse is to prowl around the bookshelf. So you do that anyway, right? When you go to somebody's house and they have lots of books, you find a way to discreetly prowl around the books. And I'm doing the same thing. I've done that now, and I want to do another bookshelf tour. Now, Mark has already toured these shelves, but it was a while ago. He's added a lot of subscribers since then, and maybe not a lot of you have seen it, and you certainly haven't seen me do it. So we're going to go through another shelf here. And this one is right at height, and it's not inset, so these books will come off nice and easy. Okay, first one is Fred Kaplan's biography of John Quincy Adams, one of the most fascinating U.S. presidents of them all. And this was one of, there was a year where there were three John Quincy Adams biographies at the same time. Kaplan's really good. He's really, really readable. It wasn't my favorite of the three that came out that year, but still really good. And in terms of an accessible one-volume biography for you to just walk into the subject cold, like the thing that we do on my presidential library series, my much neglected presidential library series. When we get to John Quincy Adams, I will be mentioning Kaplan's book. And for that, you can't go wrong. So it actually is a recommendation. Next, oh, goodness gracious. Okay. All right. This is Stanley Elkins. This is The Age of Federalism. It's about the early American Republic. It's a big, stately, heavily detailed, heavily researched history of the beginning of the American Republic, and it's boring as dirt. It's just a tome meant to do what it's doing here. It's meant to be on your shelf for research, so that if you're reading some new book and it talks about molasses imports, you want to go here to get what the dean of American history knows and tells you about that subject, but you don't want to read it for pleasure, unfortunately. Unfortunately. All right. Okay. This next one you can certainly read for pleasure. This is the Metaphysical Club, where it's about a group of intellectuals, but the star of the show is Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. He's the star of the show. He's amazing, and that's good, because he needs as much reputation refurbishing as he can get. You never, in the 21st century, Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., who was brilliant and prescient and wonderful and compassionate, his name never comes up in the 21st century without being linked with eugenics. And that is just so unfair. And a much fuller version of the man comes through in this book. Okay, the next one is Garry Wills, Henry Adams and the Making of America. There's a little dirty little secret about Garry Wills. He is a Tony intellectual, social historian and whatnot. Goes on, cable news channels, or did all sorts of op-eds for the New York Times, and seems to know his way around a 25-cent word. And the horrible secret about Garry Wills is that he's a hack. He's no different than I am. he pitches a vocabulary to come out a different way, but I mean that mostly in a good sense. Those of you who've heard me call people hacks in the past, you know that I mostly consider it a compliment. It means you're going to write really good, readable prose, and you're not going to make a fuss about it. And it's probably going to be accessible to anybody, and that's what this is. Henry Adams is not an easy subject to do. It was a great book called Five of Hearts that partially deals with him and does a really good job. And of course, there's his own book that is great. The Education of Henry Adams is one of the great works of American literature. And this is a book about Adams' world. It deals, in my opinion, a little too much with some of Adams' weaker writing instead of squarely addressing his stronger writing. But it's still wonderful, still a wonderful atmospheric thing. This next one's a little beaten up. What is this? Oh, okay. This is The Frontiersman by Alan Eckert. Alan Eckert did a long series of really well-researched historical fiction, novels about the frontier days of America. And when I stress really well-researched, that's with an author like this who wants to make sure that you know exactly which bend of the Monongahela he's talking about, that can be a drawback. And in some of these books it is, including in this one. He is prone to what now we call info dumping. He's very prone to that, unfortunately, because he's got a really good ear for pacing and a really good sense of building a dramatic scene. And believe it or not, I think the book of his where both of those things comes out the most is nonfiction. It's A Sorrow in Our Hearts, his enormous biography of Tecumseh, where he does a kind of a lightly fictionalized history, but he doesn't stray from the observable facts at all. And there, all of his skills are on display without the info dumping looking out of place. You know, in a musket firing, hatchet throwing frontiersman novel, a 50-page disquisition on exactly how you get your beaver pelts to market feels out of place. But in a long book of history, it doesn't. So, I guess I don't think you'll ever come across Alan Eckert. I'm pretty sure he's entirely out of print, even A Sorrow in Our Hearts, which is a shame. If you come across him, almost certainly you will come across little gray mass market paperbacks of his whole string of historical novels. You might want to give, if they're cheap, you might want to give one a try and see. He has a rabid following, but oh my, if you ever come across A Sorrow in Our Hearts, even though it's big, and even though it's about Tecumseh, and you maybe don't know anything about Tecumseh, get it, because it is gripping from start to finish. What have we got? Oh, okay. All right. This is by a man named Marquis. This is he wrote 2 volumes in the life of. You can't really tell. He wrote 2-volume life of Andrew Jackson at the beginning of the 20th century, and the first volume is the Border Captain, and then the second one is Portrait of a President. And those of you who have maybe watched too many of my own videos on my own channel will know that I think that Jackson evokes weird kind of hero worship. He was a reprehensible human being and a disaster as a president, a disaster as a military leader, a disaster as a frontiersman, a disaster as a businessman, a disaster as a husband, a disaster as a slave owner, just a disaster all around. And yet he provokes the just adulatory boy's own story hero worship from so many of his biographers, including John Meacham, who really ought to know better, and who wrote a mega best-selling, national bestseller doing the same thing as this guy did 100 years before. The difference here is that much as I like John Meacham, much as I love his books, you go back to people who learned how to write in the 1920s, and you are going, when they write a book in the 1930s, you're going to get prose that you just don't get in the 21st century. Sorry to say it, but you just, with only rare exceptions, you don't get it at all. The prose in here is beautifully done, just beautifully done. My only caveat would be, don't believe a word. Don't believe a word of what's written in that beautiful prose. Let's see, this one has a cover on it. Oh, okay. All right, this is Paul Horgan's book, The Great River, about the Rio Grande, a gigantic book about the natural history, the paleo history, and the cultural history of the Rio Grande. It's a great subject, and the publisher, who is this? Who did this? Okay, this is Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston before they became Henry Holt. And they sold the Dickens out of this thing to libraries and historical societies and the History Book Club and the Quality Book Club all over the country. And they made it into a paperback, and they made it into a 2-volume paperback. They flogged it, in other words. And yet, it's inert. Even the only people I could imagine even getting through this book would be people who live on the Rio Grande, and certainly nobody else. And I don't think that's always true about river biographies. I think you could write a very good biography of the Ohio River for instance, that would be readable. This is not particularly readable. Oh, actually, you know why? You know why the Ohio River was on my mind just then? Because Alan Eckert wrote a book on the Ohio River, and it was fantastic. It was called That Dark and Bloody Tide, I think, is what it was called. But whatever it was called, he wrote a nonfiction book on the Ohio River, and it's amazing. So that's why it was on my mind. But unfortunately, The Great River by Horgan is not an example of that. Let's see here. We've got some of these leather-bound things. You get a lot of these leather-bound things here in the farmhouse. This is the story of the Great American West. These Reader's Digest old things. They made a whole set of these, I think. You get all the color reproductions and the breakdowns of a town and whatnot. Fantastic stuff that you get at like a flea market. And here's another one. Oh wow, look at that. Classics of the Old West. This is On the Border with Crook by John Burke. Crook being General Crook, who never met an Indian he didn't kill. And this is wow, look at that. This is the old typeface and everything. This will never be reprinted. No way. But it's in this nice leather-bound thing. Oh, okay. Then we have this is T.J. Stiles, his fairly recent biography of Jesse James. Was this 6 years ago, I think, or 2002? Okay, so a long time ago. Really good. Not there's one other biography of Henry James that Jesse James that takes a very different tone, and you kind of sort of have to read them together because this is such a chameleon figure that this one book does not capture Jesse James completely, and neither does the other one. The name of the other one is escaping me at the moment. It's probably here in the farmhouse. But this is still a great place to start. A great volume to start with. And then it looks like we've got a set here. Oh yes, oh yes. This is the Centennial History of the American Civil War by the great Bruce Catton. Bruce Catton is out of print now, but those of you, many on my own channel, many of you have asked me, what is a great writing about the American Civil War? It doesn't get any better than this. I cannot even really describe the incantatory power of this guy's prose. It's just amazing. You think, when I say read these works of history for great prose, you're thinking, well, okay, great prose as opposed to boring prose, but I mean great prose by anybody's standards. You know, this is just amazing stuff, just amazing. And you will see these things. He's not in print anymore, but anywhere that you go into a used bookstore, you will find some Bruce Catton, and you should get it all, because he never wrote a bad book. Even when he wrote one with his brother that was less than... okay, and the last one is just another one. It's Grant Takes Command. He did a history of Grant's army that was, I think, also in 3 volumes. Very much more specific than the Centennial edition, so, you know, this is just one army, one commander, one theater. This is everything. So if you read these, definitely. Anybody interested in any kind of American history has to read these. You would read these if you were then more interested in more specific details. Wow, that's great. Look at that with the dust jacket and everything. All right, so that was a fantastic show. That was all history. So we'll wrap this up for now, but we'll do more. Thank you for